Good afternoon from Westminster and a special programme as Keir Starmer fights his colleagues' attempts to topple him. The Cabinet met this morning and Loyalists, as you saw, came out afterwards saying they back him to stay. However, there have been calls from more than 80 Labour MPs now for him to quit. A ministerial resignation this morning. And Cabinet ministers have privately advised Keir Starmer to consider his position. But he is refusing to make it easy, daring his opponents to stand up and formally challenge him, something they've all avoided so far, fearing that old political adage that those who wield the knife never wear the crown. We have not yet had a public statement one way or the other from the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, nor from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who is reported to have told Keir Starmer he should step down. Let's get the latest on another extraordinary morning from Amelia Jen.
Should the Prime Minister resign, ministers? Is it over for Keir Starmer? Should the Prime Minister resign, Mr Healy? Will you ask for Keir Starmer to step down, Mr Miliband?
Frenzied questions ahead of a cabinet meeting like no other. Nearly 80 MPs have now called for the PM to go, a day after he said he wanted to stick around for a decade. Despite reports both the Home and Foreign Secretary have privately told him the writing is on the wall, a stay of execution for now. In that meeting, Sir Keir Starmer was defiant. He again accepted responsibility for the election results that caused that groundswell of anger against him. But he also said that the formal process to challenge him hadn't yet been triggered. And he said that the public wants us to get on with governing. That's what I'm going to do, and that's what we, as a cabinet, must also do. This morning's papers had declared a government in chaos with Starmer on the brink. The Daily Star using language the British public well understands. Dear PM, by order of the traitors, you have been murdered.
I think this is probably about the most unjustified attack on a faithful since Joe Marler was banished in the final of Celebrity Traitors, and clearly someone in Downing Street has been watching far too much of that programme.
Words that the Health Secretary may yet have to swallow. It's no secret he's long been poised.
Wes Streeting, do you want to be Prime Minister?
He's even reported to have forewarned the PM as early as January that if a challenge was triggered, he would prepare the case for a leadership bid. But keeping his powder dry, he hasn't yet delivered the decisive blow, fielding questions from journalists. Others are already accusing him and his supporters of a coup.
What we can't have, in my opinion, is a cabinet coup, a palace stitch-up, which results in a Wes Streeting coronation. Because anybody, including Wes Streeting, who's been in Keir's top team in the cabinet, can't represent themselves to the public as a fresh start.
Many of those calling for a timetabled rather than immediate departure are backing Andy Burnham. The Mayor of Greater Manchester's attempt to stand as an MP was blocked by the party's ruling committee earlier this year, prompting fury from his allies. His route back to Parliament requires an MP to stand aside, triggering a by-election, a process that would take weeks to more than a month at minimum.
What we're seeing is that 2024 Labour voters are increasingly saying he should go and are split on this question. So the public are losing their patience with Keir Starmer.
We've now got two contenders who everyone knows are vying for the top job, Wes Streeting, Andy Burnham. How palatable are either of them to the public?
So in polling, what we're seeing is Andy Burnham is the standout candidate, but he's still only getting around 1 in 5, 1 in 4 saying he would do a good job. So standout, but against quite a low bar. Wes Streeting, on the other hand, around 1 in 10 think he'd be a good Prime Minister, so very low.
Today, emerging from Cabinet, some ministers stopped to give the Prime Minister their full backing.
The Prime Minister has my full support in
government
this.
doesn't have confidence.
And let me just say this. There is a process to challenge the leader. No one has made that challenge.
Good. Well, it's the fact. We've had a very purposeful cabinet meeting talking about the big issues facing our economy and society. Nothing has been triggered. I'm about to go off to Brussels to continue working with Brussels to deepen a relationship, to benefit Britain. We are working hard on the big issues that are facing the country, and Keir is showing really steadfast leadership.
Just as Parliament is getting ready for tomorrow's King's speech, fated by Loyalists as a reset moment, setting out the government's plan for the next year, the Prime Minister is fighting for his future. The old cliché, 24 hours is a long time in politics, felt so keenly today in Downing Street.
Well, Jackie Long is in Downing Street and has been following as those cabinet ministers went in and out. Jackie.
Yeah, Christian, and there have been extraordinary scenes this morning after an extraordinary couple of days for this Prime Minister and this government. An absolutely defiant Prime Minister, by the sounds of it, inside number 10, with a very, very blunt message. I am going nowhere, despite the catastrophic election results, a growing list of MPs calling on him to stand down. His first ministerial resignation. He is digging in, almost daring his opponents to challenge him. Then we had two very distinct streams of cabinet ministers leaving this morning's cabinet meeting, many walking away without saying anything, which is the usual run of things here. But the very unusual scenes this morning, we had a line of cabinet ministers come out of number 10 and come straight for the cameras, come straight to talk to reporters. They all said they backed the Prime Minister, they had full confidence in him, and they echoed what he was saying inside, that it is business as usual.
The Prime Minister has my full support. The Labour Party has a process for triggering a leadership election. That has not happened, so we all intend to get on with our jobs, and that's what I'm going to do now. Thank you very much.
What does the Cabinet say to him, sir?
How can the government carry on like this?
The Prime Minister is going to continue with his job, as he should, as the public will expect him to do, and I'm going to continue with mine.
Did anyone challenge him? Did anyone challenge him around that table? Did anyone publicly challenge him around the table?
No, they didn't. Prime Minister had many statements of support for the job that he's doing, and that's what the public should expect.
What about those who don't support him?
The Prime Minister wants to carry on with his job, as he should, as the public will expect him to do.
Mr McFadden,
Thank you
where's
very much.
Streeting give his support?
Well, the intention here, or certainly the hope, is to try to quell the frenzy around Keir Starmer's leadership. The real question is, does that have any chance of working, or is the genie now out of the bottle completely? Perhaps as instructive as the list of cabinet ministers who came over to talk to us today to declare their loyalty was the question of who was walking out silently. All eyes and all cameras were focused on the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. Huge speculation for days about whether he would use this moment to challenge the PM. The background briefings said to be from his allies was that he would only move if he thought things had collapsed entirely. Well, I suppose the question is what looks like total collapse to him. That's what we're waiting to find out. Krish.
Thanks, Jackie. Well, our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is with me. So that's what happened in front of the cameras outside. What have you found out about what was going on in the cabinet meeting?
We said last night that we thought there was a potential for this to be a dysfunctional meeting. Boy, was it dysfunctional, because the statement that Keir Starmer read out, which Amelia was just reporting on, where he basically says, I'm not going anywhere, at the end of reading that out, he moves straight on to Iran as the next item on the agenda. Nobody in the room gets the chance to discuss the elephant in the room. Is he actually staying? How quickly might he be leaving? And all the rest of it. And that's exactly what he hoped to do. He steamrolled the room a bit. And then at the end of the cabinet, you saw the Loyalists coming out there and saying what they had to say. Some people who think he should go stayed in and tried to talk to him, tried to have a conversation with him, but he declined to do that. So we are left with the situation at the moment where he has issued this put up or shut up decree to effectively Wes Streeting as the, it seems, only plausible candidate who might want to run against him, which he's saying is what any candidate would have to do. And Wes Streeting faces the choice of, does he really want to get 81 plus nominations and take on Keir Starmer? It's something he's previously said he doesn't want to do. We are at an extraordinary position here. This is properly chaotic. We were talking last night about how some of the soundings which Keir Starmer was doing of his cabinet had echoes of Margaret Thatcher in 1990. This moment has an echo of the phase just before that, when Margaret Thatcher said, I fight on, I fight to win, when everybody else could look at the numbers and think, well, hang on, you're not going to win.
And he's got his fingers in his ears because he's not prepared to listen.
One backbencher said today, he is so stubborn, I actually worry for his mental health. This is someone who used to have a career as a nurse. But I also met some loyalists who were saying there's 100 Labour MPs who are already ready to sign a notice saying that saying that Keir Starmer must stay, and they're going to try and outnumber the people on the other side of the argument. Maybe we'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is usually what happens on the Green when there's a big political moment. And sometimes we have the presence of mind to wear the right microphones, but not today, I'm afraid. Now, one Labour MP who wants the Prime Minister to step down is Graham Stringer, who joins us from Manchester. Graham Stringer, what do you want to happen?
Well, not this. The argument for keeping Keir Starmer in number 10 is to remove him would be chaotic. I doubt that we could have anything more chaotic than this. It's exposed a split cabinet. It's exposed the fact that there is little support. There is some support, but little support within the Parliamentary Labour Party for Keir to stay on. We need either him to announce a timetable, which he's saying he's not going to do, or somebody should put up and let the party and the Parliamentary Labour Party have a serious election as to who should replace Keir. He's lost support. He's moving from the tragedy of a decent man who's failed in the job, failed to deliver, into a comedy.
Right, but the thing that is stopping people from challenging him is this old fear that if you're the one who stands up, then you will be punished by the party and you will not inherit the crown. Do you think that rule still applies? Or do you think those people who do think they could do a better job, who are in Parliament, whether that's Ed Miliband or Wes Streeting or Angela Rayner, should just say, I'm challenging?
Yeah, I mean, it's a criterion as to whether they're fit to the lead. It's not quite exactly an analogous situation, but Tony Blair, when faced with the death of John Smith and an election, didn't say, after you, Gordon. He just said, I think I could do a job of leading the Labour Party and becoming Prime Minister, and he went for it. And if any of the people you've just mentioned or others want to be Prime Minister, then one of the tests is, have they got the confidence and the bravery to say, no, I am going to stand against Keir?
I mean, one of the arguments around this that is going to be deployed up by people on all sides is, you know, you're the one who's causing damage both to the Labour Party and the country. Look at what's happening on the bond markets, look at what's happening to the economy, and look how people are looking at the Labour Party. Do you think Keir Starmer, who has been so far accusing his opponents of jeopardising politics and economics, is also now guilty of that?
Absolutely, that's the first point I made. He's exposed. We've got a disunited cabinet. He's causing chaos. The bond markets are reacting, not hugely, but they are beginning to react to this. We've now got interest rates higher than after the appalling Liz Truss's brief go at being Prime Minister. Yeah. So it's not just within the party.
But do you think it needs to be resolved quickly? Or, you know, is there realistically time for Andy Burnham to fight a by-election and for there to be a full-fledged leadership election? Or does this need to happen quickly now to avoid economic chaos growing?
The criterion I would use for that is there needs to be time so that policy as well as personality can be discussed. Waiting for somebody who has had two goes at trying to lead the Labour Party, may not win a by-election, would break his promise to the people of Greater Manchester to stay in that seat and open the door for reform or another party to take over. I can't think of a worse way of trying to sort out the chaos that Keir has created by not doing a good job as Prime Minister. That's sad, but not recognising he no longer has the confidence of the party. And what we found last Thursday was that he absolutely doesn't have the confidence of the electorate. And it's almost impossible to envisage him winning an election or even getting a decent vote.
And just briefly, I mean, are you saying that if there is a by-election to replace Andy Burnham as mayor in Greater Manchester, Labour would lose to reform?
I'm not saying would lose. If you look at the results in Greater Manchester, there is a very good chance that the door is opening to reform. Reform had good results in Greater Manchester. Obviously, I didn't want them to have good results, but you don't give your opponents the chance to get into one of the positions in this country which would enable them to be on the television, it would give them a platform that is not available elsewhere.
OK. Graham Stringham, thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, the Cabinet Office Minister, Chris Ward, joins us now. He's a close political ally of the Prime Minister and was Keir Starmer's Parliamentary Private Secretary. You heard Graham Stringer there. You can now see that there are more than 81 Labour MPs prepared to sign a challenge to him. Why is he fighting this? He's turning this into undignified chaos, isn't he?
Oh, look, I think the Prime Minister has been really clear that his job is to govern. We were sent here to govern the country, and that's what he wants to do. He was sent here with a very clear mandate to do that. And what I say to colleagues is, look, we're all disappointed by the results last week. You know, I lost councillors in my constituency, and lots of others did. We're all hurting from that. But the way to rebuild that is to bring the party back together and to focus on what people care about, which is the cost of living, which is the NHS, and which is crime and safer communities. That is what the Prime Minister is trying to do. That's why that's what the Cabinet talked about this morning, and that's why, as Gary was saying in your previous piece, that was the focus of the Cabinet. And I would say to colleagues also, we spent 14 years in opposition. We lost 4 general elections. We've been in government for less than 2 years. The country will not think kindly of a Labour Party that tears itself apart in the way the Conservative Party did.
I mean, that argument has kind of gone. The party is tearing itself apart. 81 MPs or more have called for him to go. Cabinet ministers have called for him to go. There's been a ministerial resignation. It is obvious that he cannot bring the party back together now. They're not all going to suddenly change their minds.
Well, Labour has 400 MPs, so you're not citing the majority, you are citing a part of the party. But I'm not saying there aren't challenges, and Keir recognised that yesterday on Monday, that you need to bring the party back together, and we need to focus on the challenge we've got ahead. That's what the King's speech will be about tomorrow, and that we need to remember that our fight here is against the chance of a reform government, and that we need a united Labour Party on the pitch to do that. That's what the Prime Minister tried to set out yesterday, and it's what he'll set out tomorrow.
So if the bond markets continue to be nervous and borrowing costs go up and people at home are sitting there wondering what's going to happen to their fuel prices, you know, whose fault is it? Are you saying it's just the Challenger's fault, that Keir Starmer doesn't bear responsibility for this too?
Bond markets really like instability, and what you've seen in the last 48 hours has fed into that. There is no doubt about that. And I would also point out this is the beginning of that. If you have a leadership contest, that will last months. That will lead to even greater instability. Well, okay. I think the Labour Party will, as pretty much everybody has said, members will need a voice. Everyone will want to say in it. That will take months. That will lead to huge instability in the economy. And people's focus at the moment, frankly, my members, my constituents, people who I talk to, their focus is not on the internal machinations of the Labour Party. Their focus is on cost of living, NHS and safer communities. Yeah. And that's what the Labour Party should be talking about, not itself.
But you talk about that as if all of that stuff's going fine, and that this is just a row about Labour internal politics. The reason there is a row about Labour internal politics is because you haven't fixed anything. You know, the change is too small by your own admission, and all of those problems are still much bigger 2 years on than they should be.
I dispute you haven't fixed anything. I'm afraid that's nonsense. Waiting list to falling, child poverty. Waiting list to falling. If you let me speak, waiting lists are falling, child poverty is falling, wages are rising, employment rights being improved. We are renationalising railways. I could go on. Immigration is falling.
None of that is fixed.
We've had less than 2 years, Christian. We've had less than 2 years. We've made big progress in that time. But let me tell you what will not fix it: spending several months in a divisive and destabilising internal battle. And that's what the Prime Minister is trying to make the case for. And that's what the King's speech will set out tomorrow. We've already passed 50 bills in the first session, and tomorrow we'll set out the new ones that we will try and pass as we go forward, as we try and renew the country. But look, I'm not saying the results on Thursday weren't a challenge. They were very upsetting, challenging and difficult. We all lost good councillors. But the message I've had from my members and my councillors is focus on mending the country and focus on delivering the mandate you were sent to govern. Don't start talking to yourself and tear each other apart.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, as we've been hearing, the markets have not been reacting well this morning to the turmoil in Westminster. Let's go to our economics correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi, who's in the studio. Helia.
Well, Krish, political instability again in the UK has translated into wobbles on financial markets. And this really matters because we already spend £109 billion a year on debt interest. That's more than defence, that's more than education. And even though today's price spike has softened given the Prime Minister's declaration to stay on, today's moves have already pushed up costs. But let's have a look at what happened when markets opened. This is the UK's long-term debts. 30-year gilt yields at one point soaring above 5.8% this morning. That's a level we haven't seen since 1998. If we look at 10-year gilt markets, another good barometer for UK economic health, again it jumps as traders try and digest the fallout from yet another potential political coup. Now, those in the government say borrowing costs went up across Europe, driven by the Middle Eastern war. But while that is true, increasingly Britain has become an outlier, getting harder and harder hit than other rival countries. Traders I spoke to worried about the problems of a long, drawn-out political contest. And there are economic realities here too. There's more comfort that West Streeting won't blow the fiscal limits. And while some investors suspect investor Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner would ratchet up spending and thus inflation.